This reading today from Living Wisely, Living Well by Swami Kriyananda. January 17. Look for qualities to appreciate in others. What you see in them is a reflection of what you are in yourself. The more that you appreciate others, the more they will return that feeling, like the strings of a musical instrument, which vibrate in sympathy with kindred notes elsewhere. But if you see qualities in others that you dislike, your negative reaction will be a sign that you have the same unattractive qualities in yourself. Use your negative opinions of others, in this case, as goads to self-transformation. This is a very good reading, very good advice on how to view others and how to also analyze ourselves. Swami Kriyanandaji is saying here that when we see negative qualities in others, and he's not just saying the negative quality, but our negative reaction to a negative quality, that when that reaction comes up, it's a sign that there's something inside of us that's not quite right. It's reflecting back to us. And it's really one of the great ways to learn in life, is to look for when we react emotionally negatively to something in somebody else. Now, this doesn't mean to ignore negative qualities in others, but when there is that emotional reaction, there is something here. The way Paramhansa Yogananda put it, very similarly to this, he said that when we criticize others, and even mentally, and this is what the same thing, when we react emotionally negatively to something in someone else. So when we criticize others, even mentally, he said that we will either have to experience that exact same fault or flaw in ourselves in this lifetime or in a future incarnation. Now that's a little bit scary, because I think we go through life and we do react at times negatively to flaws in other people. And to think that we were going to have to experience that ourselves, it's a goad to self-transformation, as Swami Kriyananda says. There are two reasons why we may have to experience it ourselves. One of them is the way that Swamiji portrays here, that in some way we have that same fault or flaw in ourselves, or else we would not react negatively and emotionally. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. The other reason why we may have to experience it ourselves in this lifetime is to learn compassion. Because if we criticize mentally or judge somebody negatively for a fault, we are not having compassion in that moment. Really, when we see a fault in someone, we should have a great deal of compassion and the desire, if we can, to help that person overcome that fault. And so, in order to learn that type of compassion, that is the compassion and the unconditional love that God has for us, we will have to go through the experience of living out that fault and having it in ourselves so that we can know what it's like to actually have that flaw and to learn compassion next time we see someone with that flaw. So this is all a way of saying that watch your emotional reactions to others. And even if you're in a discussion with a friend or an acquaintance or somebody, and you're standing up for something that is right and true, so this is not to say to stand back and not ever disagree with someone, but if in your disagreement you start getting upset or angry or irritated or something emotional starts resonating inside, then stop, or at least later on when your discussion is over, look back and try to analyze what was it inside of me that reacted emotionally. And this isn't to try to get down on ourselves and to get too self-analytic, because that can also cause us to be overly judgmental of ourselves. Try to be dispassionate. In fact, I find it very helpful to try to be impersonal with myself and to look at my faults, my strengths, my weaknesses, every part of my nature, my personality in an impersonal way, without getting excited about some quality that's good, or without getting down on myself for some quality that's bad. And if we are impartial and impersonal with ourselves, then we can much more easily see what we need to work on, and then work on it without getting emotionally upset or down on ourselves. So this being impersonal with ourselves is really a very helpful attitude to have when we are working on ourselves, because let's face it, as yogis, we are trying to achieve perfection in this lifetime. And one of the problems with that idea of trying to achieve perfection in this lifetime is that we set the bar very, very high for ourselves. And so when the bar is set that high, which is perfection, until we reach perfection, we're always falling short. And that's going to happen until we achieve liberation. And so yogis, people who are spiritual, can tend to get down on themselves when they fail, when they stumble. So when we do fail, when we do stumble, Swami Kriyananda actually said that when we do see a fault in ourselves or a flaw, he said we should actually clap our hands with delight and just be very grateful that we finally, this thing that has been there all along, that we have finally discovered it and seen it, and we can start working on it. So that type of awareness of ourselves, our nature, our little idiosyncrasies that need work, awareness of those things is actually a very good thing. Swami Kriyananda, it's a saying that you'll hear me say very often. He applied it to the yoga postures and working with the energy of our bodies, of our spine, that we become aware of through the yoga postures. He said, awareness precedes control. And so awareness of an energy, awareness of a quality, awareness of something coming up in ourselves is actually the very first and most important step to being able to control that quality, or to fix it, or to overcome it. So when we become aware of faults within ourselves, brought up by criticizing or judging others, or the faults in others, then look back at the end of the day and be happy that we discovered something to work on, and be impartial with yourself about the way that you work on it. So this is just one way of self-analysis. We can also overdo it and be in a constant state of looking at ourselves, and that can reach a point of self-involvement that's unhealthy. And it can also just cause over-analysis. I heard a yogi once say that over-analysis causes paralysis. And that's also true, that we don't want to overanalyze. But when something comes up in the natural course of events during the day, then celebrate it and just simply start working on it, because it's always been there. Now that we've discovered it, we can overcome it. And so this is just, again, don't get down on ourselves and don't get down on others. Now, one of the ways, or one of the causes for something in another person causing disharmony, emotional reaction in ourselves, is because we have that same issue in ourselves right at this moment. Swamiji uses the analogy of a guitar string, or a string of a musical instrument. And when you play a guitar, and let's say you have two guitars right next to each other, and you pluck the A string on one of the guitars, the A string on the guitar right next to it will start to vibrate a little bit sometimes if it's close enough and the first plucked sound is strong enough, because there's some sympathetic resonance there. And so when a flaw in somebody else causes anger or judgment or criticism in ourselves, it's because that same note, that same string is inside of ourselves. So this is one reason that we should be meditating every day. One time, my wife, Maria, at the time, asked Swami Kriyananda a question. We were being sent to serve in one of the Ananda centers in the city of Seattle, Washington, and we had been living in sort of the protection of the Guru's ashram for many years. And we were about to go out into a city environment with a lot of restless energy and a lot of attraction with over prosperity and things and stuff and materialism. And she was concerned, and she asked Swamiji, How do I avoid getting caught up in all these things and being affected by it? And Swamiji said very simply, he said, meditate every morning. And if you calm the waves of feeling in your heart, then when you're in that environment, in a situation where things are trying to upset you or attract you or catch you in attachment or delusion, there won't be anything inside to resonate with it. And so meditation is a real key to all of this. So is God remembrance, because during the day when we're dealing with difficult situations and someone starts to upset us, or we're in a discussion that gets a little bit heated, we can't just tell the person, okay, let's take a time out. I want to meditate for a few minutes before we start discussing this again. You don't have the option of doing that. But you'll see that if you practice God remembrance, do some japa or mantra, or just have your awareness on the divine in all situations, you'll find that it really helps to calm these waves of feeling in the heart. It also gives one a much more expansive feeling of consciousness, and we don't tend to defend our own sort of turf or our own ideas or our own stuff, and we start to really have a greater sympathy for others. The way I practice this sometimes is just if I'm in a discussion with somebody, and even if it's not getting stressful or heated, if it's just a discussion that's just maybe too drawing myself out too much and I'm feeling a little bit uncentered, I'll just mentally only, I'll just put my mind on God, and just the feeling that God is everywhere, God is in that person, God is in myself, that we are all part of this one unified whole, and that it is all God. I actually find that very, very helpful to overcoming this sense of separation between the other person and myself. And when there's no sense of separation, you'll find that you have much more sympathy for the other person, for where they are coming from. There's much more of an understanding of where they are at. And so this attitude is very, very helpful when it's done more on the heart level than on the intellectual level. Now, you will also find that when you do this practice and other similar things, you'll find that if you really try to appreciate the good in others consciously, and it's going to be done in a few ways, which I'll talk about, but when you appreciate good qualities in other people, it tends to bring up those qualities and other good qualities in them. When you just even mentally look at the negative qualities in a person, because most people are a mixture of these things, then it tends to draw out those negative qualities. This was one of the very interesting things about being in the presence of a saint. And I had many, many opportunities to be in the presence of Swami Kriyananda. And what I discovered was very interesting. It was not so much about him and what he was. It was more about how each one of us would feel when we were in his presence. Because when we were in the presence of a saint, we would feel our higher, better nature would come up and would come out. We would be more sattvic, we would be calmer, we would be more positive, we would be more joyful. And one of the reasons, it was partly the magnetism of someone who's a saint affects our own magnetism, but also I know that he saw God in each one of us. He saw the highest in each one of us. He saw the potential for each one of us to become a saint. And when he would look at us and see that in us, we would also tend to see it in ourselves. And this was not on the thought level. This is on some subtle level, deeper level of awareness and magnetism. But we would see the highest nature in ourselves, our own highest potential, our own innate goodness. And it would feed that. There's an old story of a Native American guiding a young man. And this young man said that he was always in a quandary and always sort of in a war within himself. He felt like there was two different people sitting on his shoulders. One was heavy, dark, evil, negative. The other one was positive, joyful, uplifting, godlike. And it was always a battle between these two. And he was asking his wise elder what he could do about it, how he could deal with it. And the wise elder simply said that the one that you feed the most will have the most energy and the most attraction. And so when we feed our negative thoughts, or when we observe and give energy to the negative qualities of others, it just increases the negativity all around. But when we appreciate the goodness in others, in ourselves, when we feel joy in the universe, when we look for it in others, it brings up those good qualities. So I find this practice very helpful, which is simply when you are with people, when you see somebody, look almost like it's a treasure hunt. Look for the beauty and the goodness in that person. It's always there. I mean, I'm not talking about people who are really, truly evil. It's probably there too, but you don't want to really engage so much with people like that. But just in every day-to-day life, friends, family, if you really sincerely look for the positive qualities in them, if you look for God in them, which is the best way to do this, you will find it. You'll see it there. Everyone has this. And then you will start to draw those positive qualities, that innate goodness, up and out of them. Now, the beauty, and this is sort of selfish in a way, well, it is, but it's sort of enlightened selfishness, is that when we do this, we also bring the godlike qualities out of ourselves, and we start to feel more uplifted. And so this is a really important spiritual practice, actually, is how we view others. I've worked with plants my whole life. I've just been a gardener for many years. I was the gardener for Swami Kriyananda at his Crystal Hermitage Gardens for many, many years. And I've always had gardens and just a deep appreciation for the beauty of plants. And you hear of people having a green thumb and people talking to plants and this and that. And I've seen that there's a truth to this. But it comes from something that doesn't matter whether you talk to the plant or just simply send them love, but it's more about the appreciation. And I've learned just to have a deep appreciation for plants and the variety, the different flowers, the different colors that even the leaves have, the different scents, the odors that the leaves have. And I've just learned when I'm meeting a new plant to look at it and just try to understand it, understand its qualities. If you're around me long enough, you'll see me always wandering around through plants and rubbing their leaves and smelling them to see if that is a particular quality that the plant has, but which is not so obvious. And I've learned that when you appreciate plants, that they do a lot better. Yes, you can give the same water, you can give the same fertilizer, but when you give that love, that appreciation, that respect to them, that they do much better, because you're giving them divine energy by doing that, and you're drawing out the good qualities in them. And so it is the same with people. When you see this with children especially, when children who have been abused and mistreated, and parents who themselves maybe went through the same thing and they don't know any better, they are always getting down on their children. Those children tend to have a very low negative view of themselves. Their negative qualities come out. And the opposite, when children are loved by their parents, appreciated for who they are, because all children are different and they're all a mixture of qualities. But when a wise parent looks for the good qualities and draws out, whether it's the artistic nature of a particular child or the intellect of another, the wisdom of another, those children tend to be much more positive. And again, simply by looking for the good in others and appreciating each individual as a child of God, unique in and of themselves, then you'll find that you start to draw the goodness out of them. Swami Kriyananda even pointed out, and I've seen this experience, I also enjoy photography, and at times I take photos of flowers, and I find that when I am in an especially appreciative mood, and just looking at flowers and especially just really appreciating their beauty and their grace, that the photos tend to come out much more nice. And somehow it just draws, it's almost like when you take a photo of a child and the photographer is someone that they don't like, then the child is going to be frowning or grimacing or having a negative look on their face. But when the photographer loves them and is giving them good energy, the photo will come out nicer. And strangely enough, I see this with flowers and creatures and animals. And of course, it's the same with people. So, again, I'll read what Swamiji says again. Look for qualities to appreciate in others. What you see in them is a reflection of what you are in yourself. The more you appreciate others, the more they will return that feeling, like the strings of a musical instrument, which vibrate in sympathy with kindred notes elsewhere. But if you see qualities in others that you dislike, your negative reaction will be a sign that you have the same unattractive qualities in yourself. Use your negative opinions of others in this case as goads to self-transformation. Now, Swami Kriyananda, Paramahansa Yogananda applied this teaching in another way. In the teachings of Jesus Christ, one of his great teachings, sermons, was called the Sermon on the Mount. And in that he gave what are called the Beatitudes. And these were just simple aphorisms that have a lot of deep wisdom and power. And one of them was, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy." And what Paramahansa Yogananda taught about this, he said that according to the law of cause and effect, if you judge others with kindness, you will receive the same treatment from the principle of truth, which secretly governs all life. If you judge others unkindly, you will attract adverse criticism from others, which will make you miserable. And he went on and really even expanded on this. And this is one of the selfish reasons for not judging others. He said that as you judge others, so shall we be judged by the law of karma when it comes time to pay the price of our karma. And he said that if we are compassionate towards people, if we are kind towards others, we, when it comes Judgment Day, when Yama comes to take us back and we are judged for our karma, that judgment will be very kindly if we have been kindly disposed towards others. And what's really happening is that you will see that those who are very judgmental and critical of others, they're very unhappy people. So when someone criticizes you in an unkindly way, don't take it personally. Try to understand that the person subjecting you to that, they are unhappy in some way, or they would not be criticizing you in such a negative way. And so try to have some compassion for them. And you'll find again that it brings out the better qualities in them. But it also, again, it frees us from the harsh judgment of our own karma for the faults that we have in our own self. The law of karma is not completely immutable. It's not completely 100% cause and effect. I know that this universe works on scientific principles. But Yogananda was very clear that this law of karma, this law of cause and effect, has a certain clause in it, in the contract, where, number one, like I said, and he said, if we don't judge others, if we are kind towards others, then the law of karma will also be kind towards us. But there's also another clause in this, which is that God is law, God is cosmic law, but God is also love. And so those who worship the Divine Mother, the loving God, they, Yogananda said, are forgiven for their faults because, again, they love others, they love God. This love in their heart sort of lets go and gives less self-involvement in getting down on oneself. So in fact, you'll see that those who judge others, one of the reasons they're unhappy is that they're also judging themselves always very hardly, very harshly. You'll see this. Those who are critical and judgmental are the same with themselves. And it's not just the law of karma that will more harshly judge them, it's their own self. And so have compassion, have pity. Blessed are the merciful, they shall see mercy and obtain mercy. So pray for others, pray for people who harm you in some way or who try to harm you. And you'll find that it sort of creates a shield of magnetism that protects us from the negative effects of others' anger or upset with us. And then Swami Kriyananda puts it this way: if we judge others kindly, we will feel God's kindliness and grace in our own hearts. And then he quotes Jesus, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy." Now there's one other aspect to this, which is a very good practice. I have found this very, very helpful in recent years. And this practice, it's sort of related to what we're talking about, which is that when people speak negatively to us, about us, when they behave negatively towards us, understand that we cannot change people completely. Yes, we can influence them in the ways that I've been talking about, but we're not going to change them overnight or necessarily in the moment. So we cannot change how people behave towards us in the moment, but we can change how we behave. We can change how we behave towards others, how we treat others, how we speak of others. We can also change our own mental and emotional reactions to how others treat us. And so that is something that we can gain control over. We can't gain control over others, we can gain control over ourselves. And so I have found that so helpful because, interestingly, one of the great lessons and the way that the universe advises us and guides us is to show us how it feels to be on the receiving end of hurt or blame that's unwarranted. I remember once somebody who was my boss treating me in a way that it was unkind, or it was perhaps not a very enlightened way of treating an employee. And I could have reacted two ways. And because I'd been on the spiritual path for some time, I took the positive fork in the road. I could have reacted by being negative, finding fault with the person, defending myself. I didn't feel that that was going to be helpful in that situation. Maybe sometimes it is, but most of the time there's a higher route that we can take. And my reaction simply was this: this karma is coming to me for a reason. I've attracted it to myself. Maybe this person, they may well be wrong. They may be creating negative karma, but why is this coming to me? And because I understand the universal principles here, I understood that it was coming to me to teach me a lesson. And so I asked myself in this situation, what is this lesson? And I decided that this lesson was that if I, in the future, was ever in a position of being someone's boss or employer, that I would never behave in the way that this person had behaved towards me. And I really sincerely believe that I really worked out a karma by responding that way. That lesson came to me partly as a lesson to teach me, but I'm convinced that this person acted towards me that way because sometime in the past I had acted that way towards others. And so by learning that lesson, I dissolved that karma once and for all. If I reacted negatively, angrily, emotionally, without learning that lesson, I would not have worked out that karma completely. And so try to see everything that comes to us in life as something that is designed to teach us. And the greatest teaching of all is to be godlike in how we behave towards others. See the best in them, give people unconditional compassion, kindness, try to uplift and inspire them, see the good in others, and you will find that this is the way to divine freedom. This is the way of the saints. This is the way of the masters. And so may we all learn these beautiful lessons in life and find divine freedom through the lessons that life gives us and through treating others with compassion, kindness, and mercy. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.